There are survival stories, and then there are war-born miracles. The kind that make you stop and think, how on earth did they survive that? During the chaos of World War II, one such miracle was hammered, welded, and bolted together from the unlikeliest of materials: scrap metal. When bullets were flying, tanks were rolling, and supply lines ran dry, soldiers didn't just wait for help. They built it. Out of sheer necessity, they turned broken car doors, farm plows, and even kitchen utensils into makeshift armor. The kind that could mean the difference between life and death. This wasn't high-tech military innovation. It was raw, battlefield ingenuity. Soldiers, mechanics, and ordinary men in uniform transformed piles of junk into life-saving gear, and what they created became one of the most remarkable improvisations of the entire war. By the middle of World War II, front lines across Europe and the Pacific were swallowing men and machines faster than factories could replace them. Steel was scarce. Supply trucks were blown apart before they ever reached the front, so when soldiers needed protection, they couldn't just wait for new armor shipments. They had to get creative. Fast. In muddy trenches and bombed-out villages, troops began scavenging anything metal that could stop a bullet or shrapnel. Old oil drums, pieces of destroyed vehicles, even chunks of enemy tanks, all were fair game. Blacksmiths, engineers, and field mechanics worked side by side, hammering these fragments into crude but effective shields for trucks, jeeps, and sometimes their own bodies. It was survival stripped to its essence. No blueprints, no manuals, just men, metal, and a determination to live another day. In the Pacific, American and Australian troops fighting in dense jungles faced a terrifying problem: ambushes at point-blank range. Light transport vehicles were vulnerable, and soldiers needed a way to withstand sudden bursts of machine gun fire. So they did what desperate soldiers always do. They improvised. They began welding metal plates onto jeeps and trucks, creating rough jungle armor. These weren't sleek or uniform. They were bulky, uneven, sometimes even ugly. But they worked. The jagged metal stopped bullets, absorbed shrapnel, and gave soldiers a fighting chance to drive through ambushes. The enemy never expected it. It turned ordinary vehicles into rolling fortresses cobbled together from the wreckage of war. Across Europe, British and American troops followed the same logic. They salvaged armor from destroyed tanks, bolting it onto half-tracks and supply trucks. Engineers in field workshops became heroes of improvisation. Some even reshaped scrap into helmets, chest plates, and shields for infantry advancing through heavy fire. Imagine a war zone factory, but instead of clean floors and bright lights, it's a muddy tent with the sound of shells echoing in the distance. Sparks flying from a makeshift welder. Men bent over anvils, hammering metal until their hands blister. This was the Frontline workshop, the unsung heart of the war effort. These workshops repaired, rebuilt, and reinvented everything from rifles to armor plating. Soldiers called them miracle tents because what came out of them often defied logic. Damaged tanks were patched with melted-down debris. Bulletproof shields were crafted from scrap doors. And when resources ran out completely, they even turned enemy wreckage into protection for their own vehicles. Ironically, the very machines that once threatened their lives now defended them. In North Africa, for instance, British 8th Army mechanics transformed captured German tank parts into armor for their desert vehicles. It was part ingenuity, part poetic justice, and it worked. These makeshift creations were never officially approved by generals. They were just too rough, too unpredictable. But on the battlefield, they saved countless lives. Soldiers nicknamed them Tin Angels and Frankenstein shields. They didn't care how they looked, only that they worked. Tests showed that some of this improvised armor could stop small arms fire and even light shrapnel. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to get men home alive. In war, that's all that matters. More than once, these field-made protections turned what could have been a massacre into a narrow escape. Supply convoys that once would have been shredded by enemy fire now pushed through safely. Infantrymen who once hid from flying metal now marched behind homemade shields. and each success spread the idea further, from Italy to the Pacific, from dusty airstrips to bombed-out cities. Here's what makes this story so powerful. It wasn't just about metal, it was about mindset. The soldiers who built this gear weren't trained inventors. They were ordinary men forced into extraordinary circumstances. Their scrap armor wasn't pretty, but it represented the core of human resilience. The ability to adapt, survive, and overcome with whatever you have at hand. Even today, that lesson still echoes. In survival training and modern prepping circles, the same principle holds true. When the system breaks down, your best weapon isn't gear or gadgets. It's creativity. The soldiers of World War II proved that the greatest tool of all is the human mind. Decades later, military historians still talk about this era of innovation born from desperation. The scrap metal armor of World War II inspired later developments in modular vehicle plating and field engineering kits. What started as a desperate improvisation evolved into a standard military practice. The idea that armor and protection could be adapted in the field. From Vietnam to Iraq, the echoes of those makeshift shields are still seen today in up-armored vehicles, sandbagged bunkers, and field repairs done under fire. It all began with those soldiers who looked at a pile of wreckage and saw possibility instead of defeat. The story of World War II's scrap metal armor isn't just a footnote in military history. It's a reminder of what happens when courage meets creativity. Those soldiers didn't wait for orders or supplies. They made their own lifeline out of junk. And in doing so, they rewrote what survival meant on the front lines. That's the kind of wisdom that still matters today, whether you're facing war, hardship, or just the grind of daily life. When resources are gone and the odds are stacked against you, remember what those men did with scrap and sweat. They didn't just survive, they adapted. And that made all the difference. If you love uncovering real battlefield ingenuity and forgotten survival secrets from World War II, hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who loves true stories of courage and creativity. Because on this channel, Wisdom from the Frontlines, we don't just tell history, we bring it back to life.